Hello, everyone. My name is Christine, and I'm the host here at the Hungarian Heritage podcast, the show where we connect your modern life to your Hungarian heritage by building bridges and connecting the circles of Hungarians around us. This podcast is a place where everyone is welcome, where you don't even need to be Hungarian or speak Hungarian to join in on the fun. Each week, we will talk about all the things that we love about Hungary and Hungarian people. So, if you're looking to make that first connection to your Hungarian heritage, or you're looking to dive deeper, then this is the place to be. Thanks for joining us today. This episode of the Hungarian Heritage podcast is the third in a three-part series of guests who are all of Hungarian descent that were all born in the United States but have three very different experiences about being a Hungarian American. In this series, we touch upon what their Hungarian connection has been throughout their lives so far, how they've stayed connected with their Hungarian heritage, and for this episode, you will hear about how my guest has just recently taken the leap to make a deeper connection to his previously untapped Hungarian heritage. In this third episode of the series, you will hear from Glen Tickle, and he has a healthy fraction of Hungarian heritage, but as you will hear in the episode, he spent most of his life with little connection or information about his Hungarian ancestry. Recently, though, that has all changed for Glen Tickle, and you will hear all about Glen's language learning experience, his quest for Hungarian citizenship, as well as how he weaves being Hungarian into his comedy act. Most importantly, you will find that Glen's experience being a fraction of Hungarian doesn't make him any less excited to embrace the Hungarian culture. I would like to welcome Glen Tickle to the podcast today. This will be the third episode in our series of the Hungarian American experience. We're going to talk to Glen about his journey as someone who is searching for the puzzle pieces of his Hungarian heritage. Welcome, and thanks for being here today on the podcast, Glen.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. And, before we get started, I feel like I need to mention that your experience of trying to find these puzzle pieces of your Hungarian heritage, I think a lot of people are in the same position as you, living in the United States, having, multiple heritages over the generations. So I think a lot of people will connect with your experience, not being 50% or 100% Hungarian living in the US. So hopefully, the things that you have to say will inspire people.
I feel like most people that I know, it might just be the area that I'm in, but even like growing up, I don't remember a lot of people who were like one of anything. Like It was, I'm Italian on my dad's side, I'm German on my mom's side. Like everybody was some kind of mix.
Exactly. I was just going to say that's like the typical American experience. So let's start out talking about your Hungarian heritage. Tell us about that.
Sure. My great-grandparents were Hungarian. They came over in, I believe, 1910 or 1911, or one came over one year, one came over the other. It is unclear, and they've been long dead, so it's tough to get direct answers about any of this.
Right.
But they had my grandmother. She would have been first generation American. I think her older sister, I believe, was born in Hungary, came here with one of my great grandparents. They had other children while they were here, and then the rest of the family. So my grandmother, who was Hungarian, married my German grandfather. My other side of the family is pretty much all Irish. There's some mix in there somewhere along the line, but I've only recently started looking into like the Hungarian side of things, because growing up, we had Hungarian relatives that I knew. It wasn't like I didn't recently find out I'm Hungarian, but I did recently find out that of all those lineages, that's the most recent one.
Okay.
Like I said, my Hungarian family came over early 20th century. Everybody else has been here way longer than that. When I was looking on like ancestry.com, I assumed I don't know why I thought this. I thought my other grandmother was also first generation, that her parents were born in Ireland. They weren't. They were born in New York. Their parents also born in New York. So I don't know, but that's my most recent non-American family. And so yeah, I've been kind of interested in learning more about that side of the family, because we didn't know that much about it. Whereas the Irish side of the family talked about being Irish a lot, like, St. Patrick's Day was a big deal every year. Even my German grandfather didn't talk a ton about being German, but he fought in the United States Army in World War II. So I feel like that might have
Yeah.
downplayed some of that national heritage in
Lots to
him a
unpack
little
in
bit.
that conversation alone, being German, fighting for the
Yeah.
US. And yeah.
Yeah. And his last name was Gentheimer, which is like very German sounding.
Right.
And I remember one time he told me, he's like, I used to think that my name was hard. And then your mother met your father. And it was, I no longer felt that bad about it.
Right. That's pretty funny. So yeah, so you mentioned that you mostly were not attached, but you mostly associated with your Irish heritage growing up and, St. Patrick's Day, although many Americans are probably attached to St. Patrick's Day as it's
Yeah,
become a
more
big
so
thing.
than I believe
Yeah,
Irish people
right,
are. It's
right,
not,
I'm
to
sure.
my understanding, they don't care about it that much over there. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, it's pretty commercial. But so were you connected like to your Irish side, heritage wise, as far as like traditions and things like that? Or just basically like, hey, I'm mostly Irish?
A bit of a mix. I mean, it wasn't.
Yeah.
I mean, my family was Irish Catholic. I was baptized in St. Patrick's Cathedral. My middle name is
Oh,
Patrick.
wow.
It's pretty Irish
Yeah.
over there in the Tickle
Yeah.
house. I'm trying to think of other Irish holidays, but I'm like my grandmother was like very Irish Catholic,
Right.
whereas my mom's side of the family was less religious. Or like my dad would take us to church. My mom would usually stay home. And then as I've been looking in Hungarian stuff, the thing that I've noticed is easiest to find is Hungarian churches.
Yes.
They are great at SEO. So if you are in a new city, say performing stand-up
Right.
comedy in a town you've never been to, if
Right.
you look up Hungarian things in your area, the churches will appear first.
I'm not sure if you listened to one of the other episodes about Hugo, that Hungarian app.
I did.
Now, when
Yeah.
you're in different cities, you can find all the Hungarian things. So sign on to the Hugo app if anyone else is out there that hasn't done it yet. Okay, so now you mentioned that you're trying to learn Hungarian, search for
Yeah.
your heritage. When did that actually happen for you? Like, when did you get this epiphany, like, I'm doing this?
I think it was late summer last year. I was talking to my mother about the Hungarian side of the family because I realized, like, I don't, other than my great aunt Martha, who I think was actually my mom's great aunt, maybe.
Okay.
So she was just this very old woman I was somehow related to.
Yeah.
She might have even been my great grandmother's sister. I don't remember the exact who's related to whom of it all.
Right.
But she was very young when she came over. So
Okay.
family members would always like try to get more information out of her about Hungary and the Hungarian side of the family. And she didn't have anything to give. And everybody thought she was like being cagey or there was some like secret. So
Right.
eventually she's just like, I was 4 or whatever when I came. I don't remember. Like I
Yeah.
have no memory
Yeah.
of it. We didn't
Right.
talk about it a lot when we were here because I think at the time it was the common immigrant experience of like, no,
Yes.
you're American now. You're going
Yeah.
to speak English. You're going to do American stuff. So I don't think she was necessarily raised with that much Hungarian culture around the house.
Right.
Apart from, I mean, obviously her parents spoke Hungarian, probably learned English at some point. But again, my great grandmother I met once, like as a baby, and so I
Okay.
don't have any direct memory of her. My
Yes.
great grandfather died well before I was born.
Yeah. So all those things kind of like play into how much of a connection to really any heritage that someone can have. It just depends on like when people came over, how much they invested in their heritage and spreading it and sharing it with their family members. So, wow. I mean, this is a recent endeavor for you, which is
Yeah,
pretty.
it's been less than a year for sure. But when I started looking into it, I found out that I qualify for Hungarian citizenship,
Right.
which seemed like as good of a midlife crisis as any. Like I turned 40 in a couple months,
Happy
and
birthday in advance.
thank you. Yeah, it's like I don't know. I'm pretty happy with my car. I like my wife a lot, so like I'm not going to buy a sports car, start dating some 20-year-old. I'm like, I
Okay.
don't know. Why not
Good
try to get
plan.
a Hungarian passport? Like it
Right.
seems like a fun challenge
Yeah.
because it's unclear what level of it. There's like different ways to get it. I think I fall in a couple categories, but some are easier to get than others. And the
Right.
one that seemed like the most straightforward and less except for the having to learn Hungarian part of it, like the least amount of paperwork is
Right.
simplified naturalization,
Okay.
which I qualify for because of my great grandparents, but I have to do an interview in Hungarian, which after like a week or two after I started trying to learn it, I found
Yeah.
out is like a famously difficult language,
Yes.
especially for native English speakers. And I
Yes.
imagine, especially for me, a guy who's not that smart. Like I took four
Oh.
years of French in high school, don't speak a word of it today. So
Well, I don't
it's
think that's any indication to your intelligence. Many people took like languages in their schooling years and
yeah.
can't remember
I
a
think
lot of it.
I have the common ADHD trait of like I can learn a lot of information very quickly, but it doesn't
Right.
stick around. I've always said I have like lawyer friends, and I'm like I could
Yeah.
pass the bar, and they're like, no, you
Right.
can't. It's really hard. I'm like, pretty sure I could do it. I don't think I'd be a very good lawyer, but I
Right.
think give me a couple weeks, I can do it.
That's how a lot of learning has happened traditionally over time in schools too. It's like memorize a whole bunch of things and then output it on an exam. And I think that's a very safe midlife crisis endeavor that you've taken
Thank you.
on.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. There's
Yeah,
not like a real downside to trying to do this.
not at all.
Uh,
You're not hurting any
Other than the
friends or
fact that it
family.
is,
Right.
yeah, I don't know anyone who speaks Hungarian, so I can't like check in and do like little chat.
Right, right,
Uh,
right. Tell us how you've been learning. Like, what have you been doing?
oh, sure. The first thing I did was try to find like what apps had Hungarian as an option, and
Okay.
most of them don't. Uh, Everyone's like, "Oh, you should try Rosetta Stone." I would love to, but they don't offer it, so I can't.
I know. Yeah.
I found Pimsleur,
Yes.
which I did the level one Hungarian course on that, and I felt like I learned a lot and got a lot
Right.
out of it. And then when I finished level one, it's like, all right, on to level two. There's not a level two, doesn't exist. And I wrote them, and because there's a thing where you can request languages, so I filled out that form. And I was like, please do more of this, and they wrote back, no, like there's not an interest. You're
Oh my goodness.
literally the first person who's ever asked for it. We will not be providing this service. But as an intro, I think it's great. Like
Yeah.
I was speaking to another comic who was using Pimsleur to learn, I think, Italian, maybe, and she's like, "Yeah, there's different levels for that one." And she agreed.
Right.
There's a lot. The way
I
that it's set up, I think, is really good.
Yeah, I agree. And not to like give them a huge plug here, but just the way they present the information and how they present pronunciation, because which is a huge part of learning any new language. They do it like from the end of the word to the front of the word, like syllable wise. I think
Yeah,
that it's a good way to learn it because usually when you're trying to pronounce a new word, by the time you get to the end of the word, you're like, wait, it's lost. So
and I think
uh,
especially because so many Hungarian words are very long.
no, yeah,
Like the way they structure things with just adding endings to words,
yeah.
it gets pretty out of hand pretty quick.
Yeah, pretty out of
So
hand is a great way. That should be a t-shirt. Pretty out of hand, for sure.
yeah,
Because they're really just
and it
adding
is.
prefixes and suffixes, to use like an English term.
I watched episode of the show Travel Man
Okay.
with Richard Iowade. He
Yeah.
goes to Budapest with I think Aisling B,
Okay.
and they do like a Hungarian language lesson, and the two of them just get hung up on not being able to say "egészségedre," like the cheers thing, which I probably
Yeah.
said bad, but they did a way worse job.
Okay.
And they keep trying to like do it throughout the episode. I'm like, that's a long word. Like that, it took a long time to be able to say it as badly as I'm sure I just. And
Let's see. I think so. It's egészségedre, I think.
yeah,
However, I'm sure that my
sounds like you did it
pronunciation,
better than me, but I don't know.
but I'm sure not as good as someone that speaks way better than I do.
Yeah,
But I think it's just the attempt. So that's great. So you're, looking at these apps and there's definitely a lot of people who give lessons even online, like native speakers. So
I've seen a few sites that like basically services to pair you with
yeah,
like a language tutor. And I've heard mixed things about all of them, so like I haven't pulled the trigger on anyone. But
yeah,
it comes down to like the service might not be good, but as long as you get paired up with a good
right.
tutor,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
probably the
yeah.
way to go.
I agree. And I think everybody
So I will probably
has
be doing that soon.
everybody has a different fit of like how they learn. So, and even on my social media, like I follow a whole bunch of Hungarian people who give like Hungarian lessons. So, everybody has their own like little twist. So, whatever works best, I guess, for your goal of learning how to speak Hungarian for the citizenship.
Well,
Whole
that's the other thing
podcast.
is I can't find how much Hungarian I really need to know before I attempt.
Yeah, I would be interested to find. I mean,
There's
I do have my citizenship, because my connection is a little bit closer time-wise than yours is. So it was easy for me to get all of the paperwork. But wow, like it is a lot of paperwork to begin
Yeah,
with. So
paperwork has been the challenge
yeah,
on
yeah,
my
yeah, yeah.
end because it's like I said, they came over in 1910 and or 1911.
Right,
I did find the office in Hungary that would have those documents,
right.
but contacting a bureaucratic office in a different continent that uses a language you don't speak, like, is
Yeah,
it seems like my best option might be just go, like, just book
yeah.
a ticket, because then, like, if I can talk to the
Right.
person at the front desk, use what little Hungarian I have available
Right,
to
right.
me, like Google Translate stuff while I'm
Yeah.
there, rather than like writing emails back and forth for however many months.
Well, I'm not sure if this is actually a thing, but I imagine there are people who help people like you that are looking for documents. So you could probably contact like a translator to make an appointment at one of these
Yeah,
offices to help you go through that.
I think that's one of the first things I found was like a I guess got served an ad for a company that's like basically like, you pay us several $1,000s, we'll get you Hungarian citizenship. And it's like,
Well,
well, if I qualify for it, it seems like it
right,
wouldn't be that expensive. And that's when I started
true,
looking into stuff like simplified naturalization or
right.
just I forget what the other one is called, but like,
But
yeah,
you also need the documents, like you need to be
yeah.
able to
Like I
prove
said,
it.
I have documentation up through my grandparents, and then I just like the last piece I need is basically
Right,
any Hungarian form showing these are my great grandparents. This is
right.
my grandmother that they had.
So here's the tip I can give you. Like, if you have documentation through your grandparents, on your grandparents' birth certificate, and it'll say where they were born. So if they were born in the US, you can find the documentation there, or you can, if they were born in Hungary, that's easy because that proves now your lineage back that far as well. So there's like
Yeah,
loopholes. And
I
I
think
didn't
I have
realize
that.
that.
Like,
Yeah. So like
yeah, I thought I needed more than I might. Like I
right.
have up to that point.
I think they just want to be able to connect the dots. And if you can show that you can connect the dots, that's really what they're looking for. So maybe you could just learn Hungarian and how to speak Hungarian and not have to take a
Yeah, I
test
mean,
for
if
you.
I found out that I don't need to do this interview part and it's just paper,
Right.
I think I would still do it at this point.
Sure.
I mean, I've spent the last couple months. Also, like, I have a lot of downtime. I might as well learn
There
Hungarian. Like,
you go. Might as well. So that's great. So now I feel like citizenship is a topic that we should definitely, or I should definitely have an episode about in the future because I feel like there's a lot of people who could benefit from that. So I'll definitely put that on
yeah,
the
because
docket for.
I think 2011 was when the law went into place. That's like, hey, do you have any Hungarian ancestry at all? Then
Right.
come on in.
You're right. Come on in.
Uh, and I mean, there's steps that you have to take, but that was
Right.
basically it. And
Yeah.
it's genuinely like kind of funny to me that a whole country's like, we'll give you a passport. You just have to learn our hard language. And it's like, challenge accepted. I'll do it.
Right. Or prove your lineage, one or the
Yeah.
others.
Either
Listen,
one seems
yeah,
pretty difficult, but
right.
like I said, I got time.
Exactly. And as far as like a midlife crisis goes, if you went to Budapest and you went to these offices and had to pay someone, say a few $1,000s, still cheaper than a sports car. I'm just throwing that out there.
Right?
There's
There's other
options.
options I
There's
can do.
definitely
Like this,
options.
I don't know.
When we spoke, you mentioned that you've kind of introduced your children a little bit to the Hungarian
Yeah,
language and some
I'm
are
trying.
interested, some aren't. So tell us about that.
I have two little girls. They're 9 and 4. Neither of them seems that interested
Okay.
in this endeavor. The 4-year-old, like if I'm doing, like I've been doing Duolingo,
Right.
not to give them a plug because I don't really enjoy it that much.
Right.
It is essentially just like a game that uses
Right.
Hungarian words.
Yep.
But I have I have a streak going, so I don't want to give that up.
I like that.
I This weekend I finished first in the league that I'm in on there.
Congratulations. That's good
Thank you.
stuff.
I took this woman named Linda down. It was back and forth for most of the week, but
That's great. So it's
I
a good thing you
came
weren't
out on
feeling
top.
well. So you had time to
Yeah. Oh
plan that
yeah. Sunday,
attack and
my
execute
daughter
that.
wasn't feeling well. I wasn't feeling that great. I just sat on the couch doing that all day.
Nice.
But if I'm doing that, like she'll look over and she'll like kind of try to repeat
Right.
the phrases and stuff. Um, if I get frustrated with them, I will start speaking at them in Hungarian, not like relevant to what's going on because
Right.
I don't know that much of it.
Just
I'll just
random
start
words. They don't
counting or
know.
something. Yeah.
Right.
Or like and any of the phrases I remember, I will just say
Right.
that and they're like, oh, daddy's he's switched languages. We better
Better
because I
run.
don't like yelling and I'm
Right.
not gonna like start swearing at my kids. So if I
Right.
just, count to 10 in Hungarian, they're like, we better
I know.
cooperate now because we
Exactly.
don't understand
Exactly.
any of that.
Yeah, there is a book actually on Hungarian swear words that I just saw on social media.
Yeah,
So, I
I
mean, you
saw that.
could buy that and learn those words. They won't know that you're
I
swearing.
thought
So,
about I don't swear that much in English, so I feel like
right.
but I everything that I've learned though is that like Hungarians as a people are like pretty colorful in their
Yeah, a
language.
lot of colorful phrases that I definitely heard growing up, and now that I understand more Hungarian because the Americanization they didn't teach you back then, I was like, whoa, that's what they were saying. My
Yeah.
precious ears as a child, right?
My third grade teacher used to swear at us in German.
Oh, wow. That must have been scary because
Yeah.
it's a
Oh,
brusque language. Yeah.
she was my enemy. Like my first real nemesis.
Nice. Okay. Maybe she's on Duolingo now and you can take her down too.
No, no, she's locked in.
So tell me some other ways. I know you're learning the language. You also said that you're baking chimney cakes. Is that correct?
Oh yeah.
So tell us about
It
that.
was one of the I forget where Fort Wayne, Indiana. I think I was
Okay.
there doing shows for a weekend, and that Saturday morning I was just walking around downtown, and they had a farmers market going on, and one of the stands was chimney cakes, and they had the Hungarian flag and stuff. And I was talking to them a little bit about it, um, and they had like the special machine basically
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
cook them. And it was pretty good. And I'm like, I wonder, like, there's got to be a way to do this without buying a giant weird
Right.
rotisserie
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I found a method online where it lets you basically like wrap it around a
Right.
soda can that you
Okay.
wrapped in foil.
That's cool.
So it's not conical, it's
Right.
straight, and it's kind of a pain to get on
Right.
and off of there, but it
Right.
worked well enough to impress my children. They both really liked them.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. So at least even though they might not be interested in learning the language, they're definitely interested in the food because the food is fantastic.
Yes.
So, which is great. So, are there any other ways that you are trying to connect to your Hungarian heritage? As far as like, have you been to festivals, or is this like such a new endeavor for you that you haven't even approached that yet?
I've not gone to any festivals. I looked up, you mentioned the Hugo app. Well,
Yeah.
I learned about that from your show. And then I looked it up and I found a few places nearby that
Yeah.
I haven't had the chance to visit yet. But there's like a Hungarian club a little further south of me in Jersey. There's one not that far away in Pennsylvania.
Right.
And there's a few restaurants and stuff
Yeah.
around
Yeah.
with either they're Hungarian restaurants or they have a few like dishes on the menu. The challenge with the food though is that I'm a vegetarian, so
Okay.
like when I did Duolingo asked me so many things about paprikash, but it doesn't tell you what it is. So when I
Right.
looked it up, and it's like, I'm not going to eat chicken, but this does seem like it would be pretty good. I did it with tofu once. I did it with whatever brand of fake chicken the store had that week.
Right.
Pretty good.
That's pretty cool.
Uh,
Yeah, because it's all about the flavor, So whatever you're
yeah,
flavoring with the paprika, it's pretty good. Let's kind of move directions and talk about your current passion and adventure, which is performing as a comedian. Tell us, how did that
sure.
start for you? And also, can you weave in for the audience that Tickle, your last name, is actually not a stage name? So tell us all
Correct.
about that.
Yeah, everyone assumes when they find out that I'm a comedian that it is just like a fake name that I use.
Right.
It's a fine real name. If I did this to myself as like
Right. On
a
purpose.
show of comedy, then no
Right.
one should take me seriously
Right.
as a performer. It would be such a dumb stage name. But having to deal with it as my real name, and I do a lot of jokes about it. It's weird. Like I don't want to brag. I'm pretty good at stand up comedy.
Okay.
But the criticism that I've gotten from people over the years is that I rely on jokes about my name too much.
Okay.
And I'm like, fair, but if I don't do it, everyone thinks it's made up, and that's
Right.
embarrassing.
Right. So
So
you have to
I
address
feel like,
that. Right.
yeah.
Right.
And I did a dry bar comedy special that came out in 2021, and
Right.
it's a lot of them are on there. And it's
Okay.
because that's like very clean. Like
Sure.
it's a company run by Mormons, if you're not familiar with it, and it's like
Okay.
very clean stand-up comedy specials from people. So I'm like, yeah, the name jokes are all pretty clean. I can get them on there.
Right.
Um, like I typically work clean, but they were like very hardcore about what will and will not
Right.
on one of these specials. So I
Right.
had to just go with like the cleanest material I had, and that's a lot of like the name stuff. I
Right.
would love it if I didn't have to make jokes about my name because it's been my name for 39 years. Like I'm as over it as anybody.
But you
But
also
other
have
people,
39 years worth of jokes as well. So why
right?
not use them?
Like other people with my last name have done harder jobs. I do jokes about my father used to be a police officer.
Okay.
The joke's basically like it's probably hard being Officer Tickle, but it's got to be worse being arrested by Officer Tickle because like no one's going to take you seriously in jail.
Right. Right. Yeah.
My
True.
sister was in the army as Private Tickle, which that was one when I did it on the Dry Bar special. I was like, is this going to fly? Because like
Right.
it doesn't mean anything. It
Right.
sounds like it should, but like it's not a phrase people
Right.
use. It doesn't. Whatever people picture because I said it is their fault, not mine.
Right.
And
Exactly.
they left it in. I wasn't
Okay.
sure if they would, but it's on there. My sister hates that joke. I'm like, I don't know, you should have picked a different branch. And none of them,
Yeah.
I've imagined, would have sounded that good.
Well, I mean, you're just doing your brotherly duty by teasing your sister. So,
Of course.
I mean, it just goes without saying. So that's fair, I feel.
Yeah.
So now, do you ever weave in any of like the Hungarian heritage into your act? I don't want you to divulge any of your routine.
I've
Give us.
mentioned it a couple of times. I
Okay.
just did a show. It was like an Italian club.
Okay.
They were hosting an event. Sons of Italy, I think the place was called. There's different ones around the
Okay.
Northeast.
Right.
One of the openers like, oh, it's going to be all Italian people. I'm Italian. We're going to do Italian jokes. Very few people in the audience were actually Italian. But I
Right.
mentioned, I was like, oh, like I know this is normally a Italian venue. And then I mentioned, I was like, I'm not Italian. My wife is, but I'm, found out I qualify for Hungarian citizenship. And I've been like trying to work it in, but it seems that audience members have in this is
Right.
limited.
Okay.
So I'm trying to think of a way to like explain it quickly in a way that gets them in hearing more.
Right.
But I'm doing a show specifically. It is like a new material night.
Okay.
A friend is putting together. So she's like, I don't want jokes that you've been like trying out. Like write something and bring it here. So I've been like writing basically jokes about this to see
Right.
hopefully how they go. Like some of the funniest parts of it to me are like I know there was like the revolution in 1959.
56. Yeah.
56. So around then, like I know there was a lot of people leaving the country, but my great grandparents left way earlier. And I
Right.
don't know that much about the history of Hungary in 1910, but I do know that my great grandfather made the decision to leave being a bakery delivery driver in Hungary to digging fluorescent minerals out of the ground in New Jersey as like a better option. So it was probably not excellent at the
Right.
time.
Right. Right.
Because
Right.
he worked at the Franklin Mineral Mine,
Okay.
where I think his brother did as well, and so I don't know if it was like a common.
Right. Well, I
Uh,
think when immigrants came over, they took what jobs they could,
yeah,
until they built up themselves and their family. And I imagine that, there was a lot of war situations in the early 1900s. So
right, because
maybe
it's
they were just
1910,
trying
so
to, yeah,
Europe was about to
exactly.
really pop
Explode.
off in a big way.
Yeah. Yeah. Twice. Yeah. So
Yeah,
maybe they saw the writing on the wall and decided that it was better to do that here for possible better
maybe.
opportunities. So, wow. Okay. So you're starting to weave it into your act. I feel like Hungarian words are hilarious. So, you never know. Maybe you'll find some success with that.
I've
Yeah.
considered like I would love to go shows in Hungary.
Okay.
I met recently a comic whose native language is Spanish. He performs in English, and
Right.
he's like, I'm constantly translating myself back and forth when I'm on stage. I'm like, that seems really hard.
Right.
I don't think like I can't imagine like performing in Hungarian seems like a bar I might not ever achieve.
Right.
Um, Performing in Hungary, like I could probably pull that off. Like
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like if I use the limited language skills that I have, we could
If
probably
anything,
make
they'll
it
laugh
happen.
at your pronunciation, and so that you're ahead of
Yes,
the
to be
game.
like, look at this
Right.
idiot trying.
But I
This
mean,
is
I have.
adorable.
I have heard though, and a few people have told me this, is that they really do appreciate when people try. So
I've
even,
heard that as well.
yeah.
Which,
So,
like I said, I took French in high school, and I went to Canada the summer after high school, and we were in Quebec, and everyone's like, "Oh, they don't like it when you speak English in Quebec." So we went to
right,
get food the one time, and at least this was like right after high school, so I remembered a little bit. So I
right.
was there with a friend. I was like, oh, "Here, like, tell me what you want. I'll try to order." And immediately they're like, "Hey, nice try. You don't have to do it. It's fine. We
Oh,
we know English." But like they like
effort.
that we attempted it.
The effort
Yeah,
was made, which is great. So I feel like your journey as a Hungarian American is really more typical than people think, because we live in such a variety of cultures in this country. And, not everybody came over last year or a decade ago. Okay, even people that came over in 56, like that's already like my dad and grandfather. So
yeah,
my kids, like that's another generation removed. And then when they have kids, it's another generation removed. And the influx of Hungarians has changed as a culture. So it's not like there's big groups coming over right now of Hungarians, because all of those
right.
things change throughout time of which groups come over that are seeking asylum, I guess, from their former place of residence. But I feel like your experience is definitely very similar because people now, especially with these DNA tests that they're taking to find out like their lineage. And like, oh, I had no idea I was X, like fill in the blank.
Yeah,
So there's
my
probably,
brother took one of those
yeah,
recently, and it was basically what we were all
right.
expecting it to be. I haven't taken it because I'm like it's probably almost exactly what his was. And then a friend told me that like they can vary pretty wildly from child to child just because of like how genetics work. And I'm like,
Yes.
yeah, but I don't care. Like it's
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
his
And
results were basically what we were expecting. I imagine mine would be, even if like the numbers are a little different.
it does really, I didn't do it, but I have some friends that have, and I've looked on like their app, like you have to allow like the connection, like you can keep it private if you just want to find out what you are. But if you allow the connection, it really shows you all these random people that you might not know that you're kind of related to, like a few,
Yeah.
generations back, which is pretty weird, I think, that we have that technology. But
A
pretty
friend of
cool.
mine, she's a comedian. She was donor conceived, and she's doing a lot of like advocacy work for
Right.
helping donor conceived people like have basically rights to find like their own medical history and that kind of
Okay.
stuff.
Yeah.
Uh, and with these tests, like a lot of people are finding out that they were donor conceived that might not have known otherwise.
Right.
So I know her name's Laura High. If this is a thing anyone's interested in finding her, she does a lot of work on TikTok about it. But it is that thing of like these tests are basically telling people things that they might not have found out otherwise,
Right.
even though like it's a thing somebody could have told them.
Right.
If I didn't know I was Hungarian, then I took this test and found out, oh, you're a quarter Hungarian.
Yeah.
I think that was one of the ad campaigns I saw for these tests. There was a guy like, oh, I always thought we were Irish, but it turns out we're German. And then he gets like very into being German instead of being Irish. So I think it's a resource for people for sure
I
to find out
agree.
more
I
about their
agree.
heritage.
And there are a lot of ways to, make that connection once you find out, or once you come to the decision, like yourself, that you're like, I want to investigate a little bit more. And you also live in New Jersey, like I do.
Correct.
And, so we're close to places that we can go to, a festival, a restaurant.
Yeah, there's
Um,
the one in New Brunswick you were telling me about.
yes, yes, that's a big one. It's every year, and it's always the first Saturday of June. So you never need to really remember. It's always the first Saturday of June. So mark your calendar. Little plug
All
for
right,
them
yeah.
as
Well,
well.
after we talked last, I put it on there. It's
And
the weekend of my younger daughter's birthday, so we'll
well, you
see.
can.
We'll gauge her interest in how much she wants to go
well,
eat
I
langosh on the street.
well, I can tell you that they also have like blow up inflatable jumpy things that kids like too. So you can
I
kind of
love
like
jumpy things.
win her over in that respect. There was a few of them there. I feel like we're lucky enough because we live in an area that if you want to make a connection or you're making your first connection, you have that ability. For people that are finding out they're Hungarian, I feel like you're a good inspiration for them. Just dive in, just do it. Start looking for things. Look on Hugo, look for restaurants, download some apps and take a look just like you did. And, you'll see like after a year or so, like you'll improve with the language because the more you see it, the more you'll remember. So do you have any like inspiring words that you want to tell people about if they're interested in finding their Hungarian puzzle pieces? Like, what would you say to them?
Inspiring words. Believe in yourself is a thing I started telling people like as a joke, but then I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't know, people probably should. Like it's become less of a joke over the years when I
Right.
say it all the time to people.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like I said, like I didn't do very well at learning a language in high school. So the idea of doing it now when I'm older and my brain works even less well seems difficult. But
Right.
if you try hard enough, you too can beat a woman named Linda in Duolingo over the weekend. You just
Hey,
got to try.
right.
Just got to try.
And like I feel like that's like goal number one is beating Linda on Duolingo,
Yeah.
right? So yeah,
Yeah.
so there's nothing wrong with
So
that.
I know, like, there's different ways of learning things. Like I said, Pimsleur, again, not to give them a plug, especially because they only have the one level and, you finish that in
Yeah,
a
thanks a
month and
lot.
then you're
Thanks a lot,
kind of high
Pimsleur.
and dry. But different apps work for different people. So
Yeah,
there's probably ones that I don't like that might work really well for somebody.
yeah, I
I don't know.
agree.
Even
Like
if
if
you don't
I
want to learn the language, like just learning about kind of the culture and the food has been enjoyable. I've
yeah.
been watching a bunch of Hungarian stand-ups.
Oh, that's right.
I
That's
do
right.
not
Okay.
really understand what they're saying,
Okay.
but I started pretty early when I started trying to learn the language. I found like a couple that I follow on social media, and I watch
Right.
YouTube videos of Hungarian stand-ups. And from when I started to now, when I understood absolutely nothing they were saying to now, I can at least tell, like, all right, she's telling a story about being on a date because I
Right.
understand that they went to a restaurant and that the man was handsome. So that's like
Right.
enough that I kind of understand. I don't know what the joke is. Like I don't understand exactly
Right.
what they're talking about, but I can see improvement in that I now have like the gist of what's going on and what somebody is saying.
Right, right. And that's actually what I wanted to talk about too, is because there are so many streaming services and television and movies. There are a lot of shows coming out of Hungary that people can watch as well to work on learning the Hungarian language. So,
Yeah, I know HBO Max has a few.
yep,
Um, YouTube has a lot of I forget the name of it. The Something Family. It's like an old cartoon. They have all of that on YouTube. And I'm like, well, that's since I'm just learning. I think the thing about learning a new language as an adult is that people want to kind of skip the step where, like, my 4-year-old just learning to read.
right,
So, we have like very basic introduction to English books that are
sure,
designed for a 4-year-old. That's basically where I'm at with
right,
Hungarian. Like, because of the difference in, like, there's more letters in the Hungarian alphabet than the English one. I don't know
yeah,
all of them. Like, I'm getting a pretty good handle on like pronunciations, but essentially a preschooler at
yeah,
this.
yeah. I'm
So
not
I'm
too
not going to be
much further
able.
ahead of you, so don't feel bad. But word on the street is that Peppa Pig, if you know who that is, it's like a children's
Familiar with.
cartoon. I think that there's Peppa Pig episodes on YouTube with Hungarian.
There's what's the other one I found? I think Pakuyo. I found it through my children, but then I heard from a bunch of people like, oh, we used to watch that in Spanish class or like French
Right.
class in high school because it's like a very simple claymation show and it's so easy to just narrate it in a different
Right.
language. So they have exported it widely. If
Like,
you have Disney Plus, you can watch all the Star Wars movies with
wow.
Hungarian subtitles and
Really?
dub. Yeah.
Wow. You've literally just changed my life right now. I did not know that.
I've been doing that. You
I
can't do it with Buckaroo Banzai, which I was disappointed to find, but it does work with Star Wars. So I've been
wow.
watching those in Hungarian
Wow.
because there's few things I'm more familiar with than the original Star Wars trilogy. So I'm like, if I
Yeah.
watch this in another language, I'll understand what they're talking
Right.
about because I've seen this 1,000 times.
Yeah, same. So like we already know those movies, at least I know I do almost like word for word. So now if you
Yeah,
just watch it with subtitles, you're getting a good translation.
at least The New Hope and Empire, because that's as far as I've gotten, are pretty
Yeah.
good. Like
Okay.
sometimes you can watch something dubbed in another language and it's just like a very dry read, but they did
Right.
they did a good job
I'm
with the
excited for
Hungarian
that.
voice production
Wow. Well,
for
you know what I'm going to be
for
doing
Star Wars.
now for like the next few weeks, watching
Yeah,
Star Wars for
I
like the
highly recommend
87th
it.
time. But for the first time in Hungarian. Very cool. Very cool. I think people need to remember that when they're learning something new, you're not going to advance right up to, reading long novels. I think reading like the small books, like your daughter's learning how to read,
Yeah.
is what we need to, and also
That's what
Star
I've been
Wars.
trying to find is like
Yeah,
she has so many books that are like just here's a bunch of pictures of animals with the word for that animal.
yeah,
Like I would like that, but I can't just like run to Barnes and
yeah,
Noble and pick that up. So
yeah. Well,
uh
some of the apps or some of the social media people on social media that I follow, they have similar things like that where you're learning about the animals or the parts of the
yeah.
body. And then also too, I think if you go on Amazon, you could probably get some preschool books,
Yeah.
but sometimes social media is free
Or
instead.
even now that she's in preschool, so she'll get like a worksheet about a letter. And it's like, oh, I would love like a days of the week worksheet in Hungarian. I recognize them most of the time if I
Right,
see the word for one in something,
right,
but
right, right.
I can't
Yeah.
rattle them out. I can count pretty well now. I've
Okay.
gotten that down pretty
So that's good. I mean, listen, you've only been doing this for almost under 2 years, right? So, and you've made all
good.
these
Yeah, I don't
advancements.
not
So,
even one.
so that's pretty good. I appreciate that you're sharing your Hungarian American experience. And I know that you're definitely going to continue with this because you seem pretty pumped about it. And hopefully I
Yeah,
will
it
see you
is
at the
still
festival
fun and
in June.
exciting.
So if somebody wanted to come out, more importantly, to see your show, how can they find out about where you'll be performing? So tell us how people can connect with you, social media, your
Sure.
schedule,
If you
all
just,
that.
I'm at Glen Tickle across all the social media platforms that I use. And I have a page on my site. If you just go to glentickle.com/tour,
Okay.
it'll have whatever upcoming dates I have. People can also watch my dry bar special for free on YouTube. If you just type in Glen Tickle Dry Bar,
Right.
if you just type it in, it'll show up. It's
Okay, that's
called The
great.
Favorite, and it is the half-hour special. Again, a lot of jokes about my name because they're very clean, but
Right. There's nothing wrong
it's
with that.
closing in on 1 million views on YouTube.
Wow,
And
congratulations.
thank you. I'm trying not to obsessively refresh it to see if it's there yet, but it got a lot of views very quickly and then kind of plateaued at 900,000. And
Right.
then I noticed the past like week or so, it's been jumping up again. So
Well, just
I
keep
keep,
resharing it on social media. And when this
yeah,
episode airs, I'll include it in the show notes and send a link to it too. So we'll get you to 1 million if you haven't gotten there
thank
already.
you. It's one of those things where it's like, it'll get there because like Dry Bar is a
Yeah.
pretty big platform. I know a lot of people like will
Right.
just search for Dry Bar comedy stuff
Right.
specifically.
Sure.
And it's not views don't go down on YouTube,
Right.
So
Of
like
course.
it'll hit it eventually. It is just the closer it gets, the more anxious I get about it because it's like, why isn't it there yet? And then
You
once
see,
it hits it, I will immediately just feel a sense of dread that like nothing else I ever do anybody will ever watch.
well, I think you
Um,
first feel a sense of accomplishment, like beating Linda on Duolingo.
Very,
So
yeah, briefly, I imagine,
yeah,
but
for sure. Which,
the
this is a
dread
big,
will sink in again pretty quick.
right. Well, I'm sure you'll, come up with another like goal for yourself that you could look forward to and keep refreshing about that.
Yeah,
Thanks
big
for
Hungarian tour.
your big Hungarian tour. I look forward to that. I think you could definitely make a good tour schedule around New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania. I think it will be well received.
Yeah, hopefully. Thank you.
So thanks so much for sharing your Hungarian American experience, which is very similar, like I said, to many other people in this country. Hopefully you've inspired them to not only follow you for your comedy, but also to take a little bit of inspiration from you and seek out your Hungarian heritage. If you're even just a tiny fraction, you're still Hungarian. Doesn't matter. You don't have to be 100% to enjoy being part of the culture. So thanks so much, Glen Tickle. I really appreciate that you were here.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode about Glen Tickle's Hungarian American experience. And I hope that his words have inspired you. Don't forget to check the show notes below for more information on how to follow Glen Tickle and find out when he will be performing his comedy act. Remember, even if you only have a fraction of Hungarian heritage, you can still embrace that part of your culture and enjoy all it has to offer, just like Glen Tickle. Keep following along, and we will continue expanding this community we are building. Thanks to my audio editor, Tori Irvin, for working her audio magic on this episode. Our theme music is Hungarian Dance by Pony Music, used with a special license from Envato Market. Thanks again for listening, and don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts so we can continue to connect our modern lives with our Hungarian heritage. Until next time, goodbye everyone. Sziasztok mindenkinek!